You are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, from Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco in the northern part of the great state that I live in. I'm Ralph Tycho. Some of my friends call me Zig, and I do a little podcast because it's fun to do. Fun tonight because I have a returning guest. He's one of the brightest young men I've ever met. He's a man that I can talk to and play the devil's advocate with. He's a conservative, yet doesn't make me throw up. I mean, it's shocking. Most do, believe me. But you present your case in such a way, combined with your likability, that it could almost get down my throat. Gabriel Schechter from New Jersey.
Originally from New Jersey, Ralph. I've never been accused of being conservative before. I'll have to I'll have to think about that. Maybe in terms of baseball.
Yeah. Well, no.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, I'll buy that.
There's a conservative base to you. There's not. When I say that with respect, you.
Or as I was put it,
we'll get to know you more on the air. They'll see it, and but you're fun to talk to, and you got a great mind. And
thanks. I won't argue that.
No, can't.
I'm originally from New Jersey.
Modesty, ego trumps modesty every time. So,
anyway, I'm originally from New Jersey, but I'm a refugee. I live in upstate New York now.
Well, welcome back. I'm a New Yorker myself, originally Queens, New York. What part of upstate New York, Gabriel?
I live in a town called Cherry Valley. It's about 15 miles from Cooperstown.
Oh, wow. Wow. When you said you were going over to Cooperstown,
it's a 20-minute drive, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Just down the road.
Not only, I haven't been up there. My mother went up there. My brother's been up there.
Oh.
I left New York when I was 20.
I'll leave a light on for you.
Oh, please. I've got to.
Yeah.
The best I can tell you is that I saw a traveling Cooperstown, the museums.
Baseball's America?
Yeah. Well, this was before that. This was when the Giants had their All-Star game out here. It's probably about 10 years ago. And they came out with all the Hall of Fame Giants memorabilia, plus to sign autographs, which was cool as can be. The late now Monty Irvin, God bless his soul, he was as a New York Giant fan growing up, he was our Stan Musial. If can relate to that. No one who has ever said a bad word about either of those two names. The late Stan Musial and Monty Irvin. Class all the way.
Yeah.
So, how often do you get up there? You must have some sort of season pass. To the museum.
I'm over at the Hall of Fame Library 2 or 3 times a month, probably. I worked there for 8 years. So I do I do research for my own writing and research for other historians who can't get there, and I know where the files and the good stuff is and the archives.
Right.
So any excuse I can get to go over there, I take.
Every day has to be like Christmas for you because there's always something that you're discovering.
Oh, sure.
That surprises you.
In particular, I'm a microfilm hound. I love looking through any newspaper on microfilm. And half the fun is what you find along the way to what you started out looking for. I was on.
People don't realize what a low percentage of what's out there is on the internet. Is there something that's active and going that transcribes these microfilms that you're talking about to the net? It takes a lot of input, obviously, but is there something going technologically that can...
There is a site called Paper of Record that has a lot of newspapers, and in particular the sporting news.
Wow.
Accessible online.
I've got my pen handy now. It's Paper of Record.
You can access these through the Sabre website if you happen to be a member. But Paper of Record, you should be able to find it somehow. And there's another
I
one
will.
I
should have
of right now.
Just Google it and paperofrecord.com.
Yeah. I could access this stuff.
I'm an old sporting news feed.
Oh God, yeah.
Do they keep sporting newses of in the museum library?
Yeah, they have it on microfilm back to whatever it is, 1886, I think. For the sporting news.
Well,
one
of the things I've been a collector on and off over the years, and if I've had money, I buy, and if sometimes if I'm backed up against it, I have to sell stuff. But I've got 1956 through 1958, 59, that genre of old beat-up, yellowed sporting news. Here's one, July 23rd, 1958. They're beat up and falling apart, and they're, certainly not collectible at this point, but every now and again I go through it and I see how wonderful.
The sporting news is a treasure trove. The further back you go, I was on a reel from 1964, and just two of the front page headlines. One was increase in strikeouts. What are we going to do about the outrageous rate of strikeouts? And it was something minuscule compared to today, but they were worried about it. And the other one amounted to, is TV going to take over baseball? Worried about that in 1964. Prescient, huh?
Yes, incredible.
There's always good stuff in there.
I had a thought the other day about what we I was a kid when they were coming out with what they called pay TV. That's what the concept was going to be. And I thought it was something like, you're going to put quarters in your TV? Some guy's going to come around and collect the quarters?
But when they put in cable TV, I thought it meant, back in around 1980, essentially what MLB TV does now. I thought, I'll just be able to sit wherever I live and watch every game that's played anywhere.
Well, you had that in mind for it.
That's what I thought the concept was from the start.
Yeah. Well, MLB, to someone who gave up living with his team, like I came out to California, I was a Met fan. I loved the Giants when they were in New York, and I was an apologist out here, but my true heart was with the Mets. Over the years, I can't tell you how difficult it's been to pick up games. Only the last 15 years, maybe, could you get it consistently in bars or whatever it is, so we have a sports bar around. But that is such a hassle. I'm not a drinker. You could only drink so many Diet Cokes and eat so many French fries, and you couldn't hear the announcers, which are integral. I never knew how good Darling and Hernandez were.
They are. Gary Cohen's solid, and Darling,
and their radio is terrific with Josh and
Howie Rose. I like MLB TV because once in a while I'll get to catch Kruk and Kipe.
Oh, they're
that's
superb.
one thing I miss, not living out there anymore.
You lived out here. What part of California did you live in? I forget.
I lived in a redwood forest between San Jose and Santa Cruz, just south of Los Gatos.
Oh, okay.
I could touch redwoods from my doorway. It was like living in a campground.
Nice. It's you got to miss California. I mean, I'm not saying
I do
because I chose it. It just is special. You could go for 45. You could swim and then go for a 45-minute drive and ski. And
yeah,
really,
that's about right.
That's a good state. Earthquakes notwithstanding, we don't know what's happening tomorrow morning at about 0600 or whatever.
Right.
But
I lived a mile, Ralph. I lived a mile and a half from Loma Prieta, the epicenter of the 89 quake. I lived in the basement of a house. I had all the retrofitting under me, and every single day I lived there for 6.5 years, I felt vibration onto me. Every day.
Whoa.
There would be a little. The chair would just vibrate in place for 15, 20 seconds. Every day.
It's like somebody's loading up, but you just don't know when they're going to fire the round.
When is our good karma going to run out here?
Right. And if this is good karma, oh my God.
You're right.
If life as we know it is a result of good karma, we're in big trouble there, Andy. So, being so close to Cooperstown, I got to ask you, everybody visualizes Cooperstown, you go, you sit on the grass, and maybe two teams will play, big league teams, they'll come, it'll be an exhibition game, it'll be nice, and the kids will play. That's the summer. How about the winter?
The winter is bleak, my friend.
All right.
And, where I live, we had 48 inches of snow on whatever it was, March 14th, I think. 48 inches.
Holy.
It was surreal. No, the winters are harsh. There's no getting around it. Once in a while,
what do? You just stock up, I'm sure. Supplies, food,
yeah, you stock up, and in my case, I hire somebody to plow the driveway, and I, keep on trucking.
Wow.
But I don't get to Cooperstown very often when it's snowing. I won't make the drive unless I have to.
True, but I'm sure you've arranged it where you have your computer and you're indoors and you have this and that and your amenities and your own personal library.
Oh, sure. Well, I work from home anyway. I'm doing freelance editing and writing, so.
Yeah. Do you have a project going for the near and immediate future?
I've been working on two series of articles, actually, for this website, the National Pastime Museum. Mm-hmm. I think you know a lot of people. Marty Appel writes for it, and Paul Dixon and Rob Nyer and a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. And I'm writing two series, total 10 articles. One is on great pennant races. And that was a lot of fun. And now I'm doing awards.
Okay.
So, for instance, excuse me?
His name escapes me, but there's a great book. I interviewed him, and a very nice guy. He's been back, as a matter of fact. He wrote a book about the worst MVP awards, improbable MVP awards, and
okay, yeah.
I'll come up with it. I'll Google you his name. It's a very, very interesting work of.
That's the next one I'm going to write. It is about Joe Gordon, 1942, beating out Ted Williams when Williams won the Triple Crown.
Whoa, Joe Gordon's a Hall of Famer. He was a Yankee for half his career and an Indian for half his career.
Right, he was traded for Allie Reynolds.
Which turns out to be not a bad deal.
Yeah, good trade for both teams.
Yeah, and that's the way you like trades to turn out. You don't like one franchise to be horned. Because at least me. I mean, I grew up following the Giants. The Giants couldn't have traded away enough outfielders for nothing. Theo Luz, Manny Mota, everybody and their dog was traded away from the Giants. They bad trades here and there. And the Mets made a few bad ones.
I was going to say, your initial viewpoint sounded like somebody who was around when the Jim Fregosi trade was made.
I was just going to say the Mets made a few bad ones. That goes down as a bad one. But Joe Foy, there was
Joe Foy. Ralph, I'm one of the Mets fans who abandoned the franchise after the Seaver trade, and I did not come back to them until '84, till Gooden, Hernandez, Carter. So that group was there.
The only reason I couldn't do that, I would have, is that my Giants were taken from me when I was 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
And the Mets came in 5 years later after I floundered around looking for teams.
Right.
To root for, and this, that, and the other thing. And I mean, I was just gonna say. I always think, I can't leave this team. I have to be loyal because the other team wasn't loyal to me. That's
right.
A weird way of looking at it, but I never rooted against them. If it's an inconsequential game or my fantasy league is dependent on it or something like that.
Well, I've always had two loyalties because I'm a Cincinnati fan. My father was from Cincinnati, so it's a congenital defect. And I've been a Mets fan since the franchise was created. So I've two very strong loyalties. And from one year to the next, I generally devote the most energy to the team that's likely to go the furthest, or at least to make the postseason.
A good way of doing it.
So those years after Seaver was traded, it was very easy for me to root for the Reds because he got traded to the Reds, and say screw the Mets for a few years.
Absolutely,
they were awful. So I didn't miss much.
For four very interesting players. None of them could replace Seaver, so they all had a certain amount of pressure on them, especially Zachary.
Hey, I was at Shea the day that Zachary broke his toe kicking the dugout steps or the bench in anger. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't, right off the top of my head.
And do you know why he kicked the dugout and wound up breaking his toe? Because he had just given up
by Cincinnati.
He had just given up the hit that enabled Rose to break Tommy Holmes' record. I was at Shea that day.
Oh, wow.
And that was probably the only time Rose was cheered at Shea. Because, they hated him from the Harrelson fight. And this was, just 5 years later. And there was so much excitement there that day.
Could well imagine.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a very interesting story. The Mets are out right after they get Dougie Flan, and Tavares is the shortstop. And Tavares was kind of a stiff.
Yeah.
Now, the Mets are out playing the Giants, and I'm living in Sacramento. And I thought to myself, who would I be interested in talking to today? Pick up the phone. I dial the hotel the Mets are staying at. May I speak with Mr. Torre, please? Joe Torre gets on the line. Brooklyn boy. I'm a Queens boy. I so much like those Braves. When I floundered after the Giants left, I rooted so hard for the Braves for a while. Until the Mets came. So, his brother Frank, this, that, and the other thing. Brooklyn he played dice baseball as a kid, that kind of thing. He learned to manage playing, not dice baseball, but, board games.
Right. As did I.
And I did that too, and I read that maybe his book was later, but so we just started chatting. And I said, this may sound a little strange. Have you ever considered Flynn at short and Tavares at second? And there was this pause, like I was thinking, he's thinking the audacity of this kid.
Yeah, right.
And I wasn't a kid. It was, the audacity. No, he goes, well, interesting. The next day, and I haven't gone back. There's a retro thing. I could probably look. It was the first time Flynn played shortstop. He was a pretty good ball player. That was one of the things that made me think, I can call and talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I wish I had a job in podcasting 30 years ago.
Yeah.
This was. But there was no podcasting, and but I've always liked talking ball, and
Ralph, I had an interesting interview with Joe Torre. Back in the 90s, I was trying to write a book on the early days of Marvin Miller's tenure, and I interviewed about 25 or 30 guys who had been player reps in the late 60s. And one guy I really wanted to interview was Torre because he was a notable example. Paul Richards of the Braves traded him because of his involvement with the union. Richards hated Miller, and that was his way of getting Torre. He traded him to the Cardinals. So I wanted to ask Torre about that.
He only went on to hit .363 with the Cardinals, so it really hurt him.
He sure did. And he was managing the Cardinals, and I had a lot of trouble arranging the interview. But finally the day came, and I interviewed him in his office, and from the first question, he was the most candid and articulate of men. He was, from the first question about Paul Richards, he told me like it was, and it was great. And we talked for about a half hour, and then Jack Buck just walked into the room, and I don't know if he noticed me. We were talking. He just launched into this whole tirade about something stupid that Mike Shannon had said on the air the night before, and ranted and raved about him for 5 minutes. And then he finally stopped, and Torre looked at me and said, "Oh, well, I guess we're done." And then Torre left, and there I was with Buck, who did this whole thing like he remembered me from somewhere. I had never met him. Thanks, Jack.
Yes. It's
Torre was great.
Memories like that keep a ball fan going for life. It was like when I was in 1964, the Mets started playing in Shea Stadium, so the Mets started living out in Queens. Jackson Heights is where I lived, about very close to, I can't even tell you, from Shea Stadium.
Yeah,
and hanging on the corner. We used to hang by the candy store, the luncheonette. And the same neighborhood that Archie Bunker grew up in, the show was about. And literally the same neighborhood he and Don Rickles grew up in. They both went to high school. And we're standing talking ball in the corner, and Carlton Willie walks by.
Carlton Willie, oh my goodness!
Now, if Carlton Willie walked by, you'd know who he was instantaneously.
Yeah, he had a look.
He had a look. He had a long jaw, and he had a
little like Sal Magley.
Kind of shallow eyes.
Yeah, kind of an angular face.
Yeah. Kind of.
I was at the Polo Grounds. I can see it now. The night that Carlton Willie hit a grand slam for the Mets. It had to be 60. Well, it was 62 or 63. He hit it. He was a righty, and he sliced it down the right field line, and it probably went 260. It just got into the corner for a grand slam.
Carlton, of the most
greatest
improbable.
Moment. You didn't know to tell him that, so that's all right.
Right. Well, I would have said something. Just a nice shot you hit.
I was at the All-Star game.
Must have been 63. It must have been 63 at the Polo Grounds, because I think he was with them in 63 and 64.
Okay.
No, he wasn't with them in 62.
That sounds right. Yeah.
But
I was at the 64 All-Star game.
Oh,
talk about memories that stick in the mind. We sat, my father took me and a friend. We sat in the loge just inside the left field foul pole. So we were about 20 feet into fair territory. And I remember the bottom of the ninth so vividly. Mays led off with a walk, and the whole place was screaming for him to steal second. Willie. He stole second. And Cepeda hit a little bloop single to right, on which Mays scored. And Rocky Colavito made a throw. Anyway, Johnny Carlson.
Oh, wow.
Right, and hit the home run. But
it was
my
there was
favorite
never
pitch, my
a better
favorite
arm.
Pitcher, my favorite
never a better arm than Rocky Colavito. And
absolutely.
Never,
and
Willie,
that what one time.
And Willie coming down the line, cutting the corner, cutting the base.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
but
wouldn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm almost finished. My favorite pitcher in baseball was pitching for the American League, Dick Radatz. I love Dick Radatz.
With the Red Sox, he was tremendous for a few years.
Oh, the monster!
64 was one of them.
He was a beast, and especially against the Yankees. So I had watched him mow down the Yankees for 2 or 3 years, and there he was. He was the only guy I would cheat for in dice baseball when I played by myself. I wouldn't let him give up a 3-run homer. So there he is, and he throws this low dart, and Callison hit about a 3-wood for the home run, 3-run home run. What a shot that was! Electrifying.
The Phillies were so pathetic, yet they had the most interesting, underrated team for some reason. Gonzalez, Callison,
Tony
Taylor, Rojas, I think was with them. Wine and Rojas, I remember that.
Days of Wine and Rojas.
Right. And Copy was another shortstop they had, and of course Dick Allen.
And Callison was a really good ball player.
Absolutely. Along the same lines of Colavito, in a way, had a good arm in right field, and but the Phillies never
kind of a little like Roger Maris too.
Yes, yes, good, solid ball players. I never considered Roger Maris to be a superstar. Even when he won his MVP, he wasn't flashy.
That's true.
That was part of it, and incredibly consistent. And you take your superstars, and they're going to streak. Even Willie had horrible slumps, but as we're talking about, they were steady Eddie along the way, and there was a lot of guys that we might consider to be on the cusp of the Hall of Fame. Back in those days, Gil Hodges, Ferrillo, for instance, and of course the argument still goes on about Gil Hodges. Let me get your opinion, one way or the other.
Well, I have a couple of things to say. As you probably know, nobody has finished that high up in the voting as many times and not gotten in subsequently. He's gotten more votes than anybody who hasn't been elected. There's a lot to be said for that.
That's a great
Hodges, Snyder, and Reese were on the ballot together 9 years, and Hodges got the most votes, 6 or 7, I think.
More so than Snyder.
I think so. Yeah, Snyder was a late comer in the voting. Well, I asked. There was a New York writer named Bill Shannon, who he was the official scorer for the Mets and the Yankees for many years. And I asked him, he was an old-timer, and I asked him about Hodges. And he said of all the guys in the Dodgers lineup, he was the one who could be pitched to. He had more holes in his swing. And his batting average wasn't that great. I think it was a 271 hitter, 273 maybe.
Right.
And of course he was up with men on base all the time. So when he did connect, he drove in runs. But Shannon was a little skeptical. He said there's a reason why he didn't get over 75%. He got about 65%. So I saw him play only near the end of his career, I will
say this about the Hall of Fame. They took the liberty of not putting DiMaggio in on his first year of eligibility.
Well, yeah. That was right at the period when they were considering the 5-year waiting period. But, yeah, they did have only a 1-year waiting period, and he got so-so support in 1953. And got in 55.
I mean, I can't.
Yogi Berra didn't get in on his first ride, I think.
Oh, is that right?
I think I'm right about that. Pretty shocking.
Yeah, it would be.
Maybe I better look that up while we're talking, huh?
Well,
hey, the Mets have a rally going here.
If you have the capabilities to get to it, what would you say?
The Mets are now up 5-0, by the way.
Ooh, they had a night the other night that was absolutely incredible, and Cespedes, second 3-homer game with the Mets, and he's only been with them like a year and a half.
I know, and he's the first with 2 of them.
His arm impresses me, and the fact that he's playing left with the strongest arm in that outfield.
Yeah.
I wonder why they couldn't convince him to stay in center and leave him there, and put Granderson in left, just given his arm. He's got a cannon.
He does,
and it's accurate as hell.
He made a throw from the warning track that first time, right when he came to them, from the warning track and a little like in right center to third base on the fly to get somebody. Oh, he has a tremendous arm.
Yeah.
I was just writing to somebody that when they signed him last winter, it was just for nights like these last couple, when just having him in the lineup, you know, your pitchers aren't going to give up too much, and he can win a game all by himself. He's done it many times. And he can
carry you for a week. One of those guys.
He can, yeah.
And he, needless to say, he makes everybody in the lineup stronger.
Yeah, I think so.
Right down the line. What do you make of Daniel Murphy coming on the way he has?
Yes, interesting.
Is that just met bad luck or what? Although he taketh and he gave away, his defense was a little shaky, but this never with this kind of hitting. This kind of hitting makes up for a lot of bad defense.
Well, I mean, his hitting, his production grew exponentially, like by 2 or 3 exponents last year. He reminded me a lot with the Mets of Dave Magadan.
Right.
A line drive hitter, a good eye, good contact guy. Smart player. Not much range, not much power, but, you know, pretty good hitter.
Yeah. But
what he's done with Washington is MVP stuff. I thought he was the MVP last year.
They're interesting this year if they can stay healthy, and if
he's hitting 472 this year.
Yeah, they are?
He is. Murphy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is, and Zimmerman is coming back. They're going to be a tough team for the Mets.
They have a tough lineup. They do.
Yeah, very tough lineup. Harper has something to prove. And Dusty Baker is as good as it gets, except against the Angels when he flipped the ball as if, hey, it's over. And they didn't think it was quite over. I think it was Spezio, if I remember, hit a home run.
Yes.
To beat them. So, but that I'd like to see it for Dusty's sake. I'd like to see that not be his legacy.
Right.
He never quite put it, and couldn't ask for a better human being in the whole world than Dusty Baker. So I root for him. That's my problem sometimes. My fantasy league notwithstanding, I root for players and managers that I like.
Yes.
I
find myself doing that more and more, rooting for individuals. Since they've become vagabonds and mercenaries, you just have to attach yourself to a few of them and follow them wherever they go.
And there are some that don't. Some that...
I've even liked a Yankee or two over the years. Not very often.
I have too.
Once in a great while.
The kid that wore number 12, the hitter, the second baseman, who really wasn't a great fielder. Soriano, traded to the Cubs. The ball really zinged off the bat.
He was traded to Texas for A-Rod.
Oh, okay. Did he end up with the Cubs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, wow. That's how much he brought in those days. And surprised me that his career didn't turn out better. Not that the career he had was chopped liver. He was a pretty good ball player for quite a long period of time. And to say you were traded for A-Rod, what's your take on A-Rod? Let me ask you a question. I need you, gotta tell me, I'm going to ask you a question. When the Yankees got A-Rod, should have he been at the shortstop? Didn't he have much more range than Jeter? Was so much of it to keep Jeter, to keep that Yankee captain thing and all that? I thought he was a much better fielder, and I think over the years he probably could have served the Yankees better as a shortstop.
I agree. I do freelance editing, and I did a book recently which had some new fielding system that went along with a lot of other things in ratings. Anyway, the system declared that the position player whose defense had cost his team the most runs over the course of a career was Jeter.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I can't even begin to think of the complication in figuring stats like that.
Yes, I know. Well, I'm skeptical of all defensive metrics because I don't think they measure what's relevant. Anything that's based just on chances is very subjective. But here's a question I always ask, Ralph.
Doesn't so much of it depend on the pitching staff that you have?
Sure, yeah.
You're an infielder, you don't seem to get a lot of chances, but you have a pitching staff that throws fly balls.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But here's the question I asked about metrics. How do you measure? Remember when Ichiro was a rookie? He made a throw to third base that gunned somebody down. And it was, oh my God, look at this guy's arm. And for years, guys wouldn't even think about going from first to third against him. How many bases did Ichiro save by that one throw?
It's a very good
that? How do you measure it?
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem like he got as many assists as but he didn't have the chances because they wouldn't run on him.
I mean, Richie Ashburn, I know he was a great player, but he set all kinds of records and led the league time and again in putouts. And granted, he was a speedy center fielder, but he had ice wagons in left and right field, and anything that went up in the air was his if he could get it.
Right.
So,
hey, Gabriel, let me tell you a funny Willie Mays story.
Oh, sure.
And it relates to exactly what we're talking about. I'm just not bringing this in. In 54, or I think it was 54, when they won it all, Mays and Mueller came down to the final day or two for the batting title. Maybe the final day. One hit 343.2, that kind of thing.
Right.
Mays ends up winning it. And Mueller, who was one of those ice wagons, that's a great way of expressing it, was the right fielder, and Willie the center fielder, obviously. And Willie comes over to him, and they're having an interview in the clubhouse. And Mueller, a humble guy, says to the press and to Willie, says, to lose to a guy, to the best center fielder in baseball, no big deal for me. I give it up. And Willie says, the best right fielder, too. Because he covered for him in right field.
Nice.
I thought it was such a great Willie line that show you how good. Best right fielder too. There's a picture somewhere that I have, or it's on Google, of Willie coming over and making a catch so close to the foul line, and Mueller standing next to him.
Yeah.
It's almost like, what are you doing, Willie? That kind of thing. But that's my Willie Mays story, and I will swear for the rest of my life that that was the greatest ball player around. And I know that Barry Bonds had a period of 5 years where it's pretty hard for anybody in baseball to have had that kind of streak for 5 years. He wasn't missing. They weren't pitching to him. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, I was there.
But
he would not swing at anything out of the strike zone, and anything in the strike zone he crushed.
Right. They couldn't.
Like the second coming of Ted
Plus,
Williams.
he had that armor. They couldn't even scare him to brush him back because he had this thing that was out of like a military supply store. It was attached to his arm, where I don't know if they forced a rule change. I don't see many players wearing that kind of gear anymore.
Yeah, yes. I think there is some.
And you can say, well, he was hurt and this, that, and the other thing. But he was in a zone that was unbelievable. Different era. I've learned that it's impossible to compare players anymore. And, the truth is, when we grew up and we thought we could compare Ted Williams to Ty Cobb, and who is the best right fielder of all time, and Melot, we couldn't, because there was a number of factors. There were the dead ball era, there were the different stadiums, the different rules about spitballs, and the most important, they didn't have African Americans. So it skewed the whole thing all the way back. So I'm not as sorry as I used to be now that I've accepted. It really got me, when the steroid thing happened, it really got me from the standpoint that one of my favorite things to do was to just chat and see about the different eras. Was Cobb better than Williams and all that? Well, it skewed that, but I didn't have an appreciation back then for the inability to compare generations even without the steroid era. That all we could do is compare players in the era that they play in and in the years that they play in. And Bonds, for that reason, was incredible. Willie had a flair, though. Whoever, the numbers, the steroids and non-steroids, Willie had a flair that you couldn't. Willie, Ricky Henderson, Jackie Robinson, they could change a game. They could take a game and literally take it over in the field with their arms. Batting. It was a wonderful era we lived in. And we continue.
I think so.
Wonderful era. And let's continue to live, my friend. And I hope you'll continue to come back. And
I'll be happy to, Ralph. I enjoyed it.
Good. Because you're a terrific guest. And I'm appreciative. I'm going to end the show the way I generally do. I'm going to implore you, Gabriel Schechter, to keep your dreams wet, keep your humor dry, keep your kids out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics that wear dresses. Now, you don't have to do all four. A lot of people listen to this and go, oh, what a stretch. But if you could do... if you could do one or two, it would help. Right?
I can do that.
If you could do all four, you should. Let's face it, most people should be able to do all four standing on the head. And I'll tell the audience
it's been a pleasure, Ralph.
My pleasure, Gabriel. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Be well, and
Good night.
adios, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Okay.